Okay, and we're recording.
All right. Well, thank you so much. Hello, everyone. Thank you for taking the time to join us today. We're here with the candidates from District 2, which incorporates the areas of northeastern Colorado Springs, just east of the Air Force Academy. The Independence Center is passionate about civic engagement, and we recognize that City Council directly impacts the daily lives of our community members in many ways, including transportation, housing, and infrastructure. These issues are important, not only to the disability community, which makes up nearly 20% of the population, but also to those community members who work with, live with, care for, and know individuals within the disability community. The disability community is the largest minority community that anyone at any time can join. For this reason, we are committed to engaging our City Council candidates in active discussions around topics that impact the disability community now and in the years to come. We will begin by allowing each of the candidates to briefly introduce themselves, and then we will move into the question and answer segment and close with any final comments from the candidates. We ask, in the interest of time, that the introductions be limited to around 90 seconds and that the responses and questions be also limited to around 90 seconds. We will have an alert at 30 seconds, 10 seconds, and then when time is needed to end. We kindly ask that candidates not speak over one another. In order in which questions are asked is completely random. And with that, we will begin with brief introductions, and we'll start with you, Mr. Helms.
Good afternoon, everyone, and thank you. I want to thank everyone for allowing all of us to be here this afternoon and be able to join in this very important conversation. When I decided to run for City Council, all I was doing, I wanted to just extend what I've been doing for my entire adult life of service. I joined the Air Force and served our nation. So I wanted to just continue serving our community the way I served our nation. I'm a proud graduate of our United States Air Force Academy, and I have over 40 years of leadership and management experience, not only at the commanding officer level, but also as an educator. And I'll talk a little bit about that, and as a charitable organization leader. And I believe District 2, I think I represent those that live in District 2, and I'm really excited about potentially being able to represent them. I grew up in a family that loved to serve. My father was a police officer, followed by a small business owner, and then he became a city council member and finally mayor of my hometown. My mother was also a small business owner. Together, they inspired me to learn how to lead. I earned my Eagle Scout Award, and that helped me to then get an appointment to the Air Force Academy, and where I served as a pilot, but I was also a staff officer. I have a lot of experience in budgeting and strategic plans. And as an educator here in Colorado Springs, I'm a substitute teacher in District 20 and 38. And one of the things I have done is I keep being asked back to help in the special needs community there, and especially in Bear Creek Elementary School. And I'm happy to talk about that later. Thank you very much for having us.
Thank you so much. Councilman Geislinger, would you like to take us next?
Sure, I'm Dave Geislinger. I have been your City Council member in District 2 for the last 4 years. I appreciate and thank Mr. Helms for his service as a Air Force officer. I thank Fireman Noblit for his service as a firefighter. I have served 10 years as a deputy district attorney. I served in my church as an ordained deacon for the last 15 years. I have served over the last 4 years as a hospital chaplain, being frontline to the COVID crisis in the last year. And so I think it's wonderful that all three folks from different aspects are all servants and servant leaders and aspire to be servant leaders. As part of my deacon formation training, I was privileged, honored to serve as a volunteer for Mosaic for a year. In the course of my engagement with that institution, learned the dignity and the worth of every human being, including those that have developmental, physical, and mental disabilities. Unfortunately, those are not always honored. And I look forward, I have striven to look forward to it. I listened to what Deanna said, that the three major concerns she listed are transportation, housing, and infrastructure. In my correspondence with the Alternatives in Aging, the aging community's three biggest concerns are transportation, housing, and parks infrastructure. In my conversation with the young adults community, their three big concerns are transportation, housing, and parking infrastructure. I think what we need to do going forward, and what I will strive to do, is to continue to be the bridge. You don't make the bridges, you are the bridge between these various groups that have the same concerns. And I look forward to being your council member for the next 4 years so that I can continue this. Thank you so very much for this opportunity. And I look forward to engaging the other candidates and Deanna and the questioners. Thank you.
Thank you. Mr. Noblett.
Well, thank you. And I'll join with the other two gentlemen in saying that we greatly appreciate this opportunity to come hang out and show what we're all about and convey the messages and the reasons why we want to be city council. I've been a public servant for 40 years, 25 of that with Colorado Springs. I've lived in District 2 for just short of 30 years with my beautiful wife. We raised our daughter there. And her family actually, and their household was included in the expansion or the redistricting of District 2. So they ended up falling inside of those boundaries. So it's kind of interesting to have both our child and our grandchildren all living within our district. I've seen a lot of changes that have transpired over the years since I arrived here in 1985 to Colorado Springs. And I believe that we have a lot of challenging issues as we see a lot of rapid development and growth within this community. And I want to make sure that as we move forward, we do so in a way that takes into account all of the community and not just select perspectives or sectors of that community, and making sure that they all have the representation and the accountability, and obviously the impact that we have as far as being able to provide those needs that are really critical to some of those that are less served than others, to make sure that we adequately make the resources available so that we can make the impact into the entire community in a way that takes care of the least of these. And like the other, both Randy and David, I know that they've got great servant hearts, and I think we all come seriously from that perspective. And so I think fortunately, whoever is successful at the end of this, I believe is going to be an awesome support for your organization, just from the perspective of having humble and servant hearts.
Thank you so much for those introductions. So I'm going to start us off on the question and answer period. We're going to start by talking about the long history that Colorado Springs has, all right, in disability and civil rights advocacy pieces. So Colorado Springs does have a long history, including the creation of Title II of the ADA rights. The Americans with Disabilities Act was signed into law by Republican George Walker Bush in 1990. After 30 years, the question is, how would you address the barriers that exist for individuals with disabilities in Colorado Springs, given resistance to change from some community members? And Mr. Noblett, I'll let you start us off.
Well, I would be absolutely frustrated if I actually came across those that would be resistant to that. So that would be unknown to me to start with, but two, very frustrating just to find out that there is in fact a reluctance on behalf of anybody to ensure that we have accommodations that are appropriate for everybody within our community. I do know that the structure of our city and the sustainable funding that we challenges that we face do make some of the addressing of some of those issues challenging at times, simply from a financial perspective. So overall, I believe that I've got a great plan and looking forward to working with other city leaders to develop a more proven and sustainable revenue stream. And to that point, I think that that's going to encompass those things that are part of the needs of this community to ensure that we're able to utilize the resources necessary to bring those accommodations about. As anybody who has been around those that have challenges within their life, either physically or mentally, we know that the best thing that we can do is actually give them that opportunity to get into and be part of the society to which they live. And it's a great joy and it's a privilege to be able to do that, to lift those people up and give them access. And with that, we want to make sure that we remove those barriers. So first of all, I would definitely have no reluctance to lead the charge to overcome any obstacles that may be presented, because that's super frustrating. But we want to make sure that we include as part of this community in the funding that's necessary to make those things happen for our people that definitely need those advances in those areas.
Mr. Helms.
So the first thing I did when you contacted us to think about this issue is, as I do with most things, I went straight to the city's budget, the 2021 budget. And I drove down into the Office of Accessibility, which happens to be in the budget on page 16-19. And I wanted to see what the city actually does from a time period, all the way back from 2018 up to now to 2021. And I was really happy to see that the city council and the city added quite a bit this year to the CIP, the programmatic piece. They added 150,000. So roughly the budget is $1.2 million for 2021. Roughly 480,000 of that is for the 4 employees plus operating expenses inside the office, and the 750,000 is for the actual programmatic pieces of helping accessibility throughout the city. And that went up from 600,000 to 750,000. That's a pretty good leap. And I'm really happy to see that. And all this is in the general fund that I'm talking about. That's where, when you want to do something, it's all about the money to actually pay for accessibility throughout the city. And accessibility, as we all know, covers many areas, and your question was very good about. So not only does it cover the sidewalks, making sure the sidewalks are accessible, the roads, the transportation pieces, the buses and everything that goes along in that, and making it wheelchair accessible, as well as other accessibility. But it's even beyond that. It's the things that help people gain access to the internet, keyboards, magnifying devices. I just happen to have a vision problem that I get help with through the VA on accessibility. So I live that on a day-to-day basis. And I always start with the budget to see where it's really, that's the real answer, is the budget. And beyond that is then the accessibility. So thank you.
Thank you, Mr. Helms. Councilman Geisler.
Thank you. We did increase the budget by $150,000. Unfortunately, and that's good. And I agree with Mr. Helms that money does show emphasis. Unfortunately, that increase was due in large part, I think, to what Ms. Rumsey talked about, which is a refusal to acknowledge our responsibility in the past to address these issues. And so there is a responsibility that we recognize in many areas, and what we have recognized with regard to road maintenance, with regard to stormwater maintenance, with regard to ADA compliance, that we have to catch up, and we have to honor those things that have been neglected by prior, and I'm not accusing Mayor Suthers. I think Mayor Suthers has done a really great job with the last 2 city councils of identifying where we have fallen short before and trying to catch up. We do still need to catch up. And it is unfortunate. I said 4 years ago, I'd say it again. I would love to have a magic wand. There are groups in our city who are resistant to this change. There are groups in our city who think that this is not putting money where it needs to go, that money should be reserved or taxes reimbursed, and that we shouldn't be doing these sorts of things. I am most proud over the last 4 years that that narrative is starting to change. City Council has stood up to people who have not been willing to accept these responsibilities, these obligations on behalf of the city. And we are hearing from citizens who recognize that for us to become the city we want to become and that we are destined to become, we have to take these responsibilities. And so I think that putting everything else aside, the momentum over the last 4 years of actually confronting citizens who are resistant to these sorts of civic obligations is where it starts. The money then follows from there.
Thank you. So the next question is related to transportation. We've been talking a lot about that. So what solutions do you propose to solve the needs of people who are transit dependent so that they can have access to all areas of the city? And Mr. Noblet, I'll let you start us off.
I believe overall we need to look at the efficiency of our transport system. I know that especially with seniors, they've got different agencies throughout the community, Silver Key, and I'm trying to think the other one off the top of my head, forgive me, that have that ability to provide that door-to-door service, which is what we really need, is to have the opportunity for these people with access and transportation based on a very direct routing system. There are opportunities, obviously, through the Metro Mobility that we have as well, and the regular bus system, as folks transition into different levels of their ability within their abilities to be able to utilize those services. But I do believe that we need to develop some efficiencies within the program, because it seems as though that the dollars and the increase in funding that we've had for that hasn't necessarily translated into the broadening of the mass or public transportation that we really need. I know for a great majority of the northeast portion of town, that access has definitely had some negative impact, that there really hasn't been as much as there may need to be. So we need to encourage the utilization of mass transit, but we also need, I think, to really delve down deep and try to get more focused on ensuring that we have the availability of that singular or door-to-door type transport for those people that are definitely more dependent upon that kind of access.
Thank you for that. Councilman Geislinger?
I talked about the magic wand. This is one that really does require a magic wand, and I don't mean that in a humorous sort of way. Our public transportation system is incredibly subsidized right now. It operates at a loss. Colorado Springs has a huge geographical footprint in proportion to its population. And so we don't have the densification of potential riders that would justify additional sorts of more frequent routes, more routes door to door. I do think, as I indicated at the outset, isn't it interesting that this is a major issue for the Independence Center and the clientele it serves, for the older generations, for the younger generations. What I am looking forward to is, I think that we do have densification in the downtown area, and that we can do a circular bus in the downtown area, putting parking outside the downtown area. And then maybe that would allow us to have, as my opponent says, more of an opportunity to centralize there and then use a more robust central downtown area transportation. There is fortunately a regional transportation plan that is in the process of being developed, and that this will be part of that. There is a city transportation plan that is in the process of being finished. This will be part of that. I also think that one of the things that we have lost sight of in our community over the last 10, 15, 20 years, not only with regard to disabled adults, but with regard to homeless and the like, is that Colorado Springs is not a Department of Human Services or Department of Health organization. That funding is through the county, and I think it's necessary that the county.
Thank you, Councilman Geislinger. Mr. Helms?
Thank you. I think all three of us recognize transportation is one of the most incredibly hard problems that we have in the city to accomplish. One of the first things, again, I did is I went to the Colorado Springs strategic plan. And again, I'm not an expert in any of this, so I go to the documents where I try to learn from. I looked at the strategic plan, and one of the 4 pillars in there is developing relationships. And in my mind, transportation is one of those that we can reach out to our there's 7+ really large charitable organizations here in Colorado Springs that I think transportation could be a part of that conversation with those charitable organizations to improve upon our ability to, because what I see is if you're at the VA center, if you're at other living areas, there's these smaller type van buses that do a really good job of providing transportation to their residents or to the people who need their services. So I see it out there. I don't think we developed the right relationships enough. The other piece is we are a large city. I honestly believe we need to be looking at places like, I've said this before for other things, Washington, D.C., Los Angeles, not for a good thing, but we need to be looking at different larger cities and see how their transportation systems are actually working. And that's how I would start to proceed, because they're right. Our bus system is not up to par to be able to support people outside the city. I think, as others have mentioned, inside the city itself, I think our bus system is okay, but outside, it's not. Thank you.
Thank you, Mr. Helms. Our final question is about housing. So what is the role of the city in making housing and public spaces more accessible for people with disabilities? And Councilman Geislinger, I'll let you start us off.
Well, I think putting everything else aside, when we're talking about the specific clientele of people with disabilities, I think and builders are attuned to the fact that disability functional housing is a component. It is not, given the overall housing issues that we are facing, I don't think we can do that and make every single house disability and age friendly, because that would increase the price of housing for other folks who don't need that. And I know that's kind of a difficult situation, but we need to be aware that there does need to be independence issues built into new houses and in refurbished houses. Housing has been my big issue for the last 4 years. It's what I said it was going to be the big issue. We have made substantial steps towards confronting the housing projects, so much so that we have 5 projects right now for public that are financed through public activity bonds that are either being built or have been approved to be built, where 2 years ago was the first time that City Council directed the staff to use public activity bonds. Before then, they were designated and delegated to the county. I have a 4-step plan of things that I'd like to do going forward with regard to housing that involve changes. I bet I don't even have enough time. So, but if you look at what I've said to the housing authority, which has endorsed me, to the realtors, which have endorsed me, it is consistent. There are 4 plans within the city that I want to implement, and there's one at utilities. Now that we have the foundation developed, we can really move forward on attacking the housing problem.
Thank you for that. Mr. Helms?
So first, right off the bat, I support the mayor's agenda on what's called the Plan COS, and inside of that, the plan, Retool COS. And that's a broader perspective of the housing issues that we have, not specifically when it's related to the disabilities, accessibility. I will address the accessibility. I have firsthand knowledge of when we were looking to build a home here in Colorado Springs. I ran into a builder. His name is Dave Hammer. He's been in a wheelchair for many years. He's very attuned to building homes that are accessible. My mother-in-law was living with us, and we needed that accessibility. So we had our home built for wheelchair accessibility. Just an outstanding builder. One of the things that I promote for all builders, and especially for accessibility, is whether it's incentives, whether it's reduced fees, reduced regulations to help these builders. Now, these builders live here. They live, the majority of them, not all of them, of course, but the real large ones don't, but the local builders live here, and they want to live within the community, and they want to do the things that are right, whether it's about lands, parks, acreage, all those things, the water, all those things, they want to do the right things. So I encourage that we continue to support the mayor's agenda, and that we look at things like reduced fees, incentives, those types of things, and we can move that over to accessibility to see where that takes us in these types of houses. Thank you.
Thank you. Mr. Noblitt?
Yeah, thank you. I think we could start. So fundamentally having an understanding of exactly where's the fastest and the best and the most impact that we can do, given the limitations that we have. Again, budget's a huge consideration. And then even the adding on of the reduction of zoning changes and the things that we need to do. All of that being said, getting into the community and really networking and developing the home host provider network and letting people be aware of the consideration of what it can be to actually change some of the zoning areas and some of the neighborhoods that we have, so that we can broaden the scope of home host providers, so that we have places for our folks to be able to have a place to start to call home. And then we can work out from there and to broaden that and look at the challenge that we have throughout the community on every level, as far as affordable housing, the access to it. And then that transitions literally into the same thing that we were talking about with access to transportation and the resources that are going to be necessary, right? Just to live life. So I believe that we need to make sure that we have a good structure within our community, so that as those organizations that support home host providers are able to broaden that base of available houses that we have, have access to. That's a great beginning that I think can happen rather quickly and simply by addressing some of the zoning changes and some of the funding mechanisms that we need to do to make sure that those transitions to those homes are easily made and supported. That's a great base layer. So that's something I think that we can make on a short-term basis as we build into looking at the overall issue of the struggle that we have for housing in our community. As Mr. Geislinger said, it's been an issue that we're tackling and hopefully working towards a solution.
Great. Thank you so much for those responses. I really appreciate it. So that's the end of our question and answer segment. I'm going to give you each now 90 seconds to just kind of share any final thoughts or comments, and we're just going to start to wrap things up. So we will start with you, Councilman Geislinger.
Couldn't tell who you were pointing to. Now that I have 90 seconds, I do want to add on to the last question, because there's time. It's to have a public official in the planning department whose job is to assist people and developers in constructing affordable housing and going through the labyrinthian thing to get those housing projects approved, to establish a seed fund so that nonprofits can access that rather than tying their money up for 2 or 3 years. Getting a land bank established that really will allow developers to access land through the city's real estate manual that we have changed, and then addressing fees both at the city and at utilities. With all that said, I think fundamentally for me, philosophically for me, I am as I've said, a Catholic deacon, and that faith is extraordinarily important to me. Fundamental to that faith is that every human being has infinite worth and dignity. I have striven as best as I can over the last 4 years with the limitations of living in a world where there is conflict between people to give every single person and every single constituency that comes before me that dignity and that worth. And I promise that if I am reelected, I will continue to do that, not only for your community, but for every community of the lesser and the least among us. Thank you.
Thank you. Mr. Noblett.
I love technology, right? You're trying to hit the right buttons to get it to go. It's like, don't start my time yet. You know, the significance, first of all, I want to say, I hope when this is all over, I think all the candidates, especially in District 2, can sit down and at least everybody toss in their remaining ideas and support and their perspectives for the individual that's successful at obtaining the seat. Because there's been tremendous perspective and great heart and servitude, I think, shown by everybody who earnestly is pursuing this spot. That being said, I also understand that there are the challenges that this community, this specific community faces, and that within the COVID environment, in addition to that, it has really complicated the issues for these folks, for their access, for their ability even to get out, for their exposure or consideration even for immunizations with access and those type of issues. If there was an understanding to provide more of a network throughout the community to make sure that we brought those folks in so that the underserved portion of that being represented as a minority community with the recognition that those that are also in minority communities seem to receive, to make sure that there's a full and well-informed populace that knows that there needs to be support for this community. And I think the compassion that comes forth from so many organizations within this community would improve the profile of the challenges that your organization faces, and to help support that collectively as a community, because that's what we do really well, is support things as a community. I've seen it since I've moved here. It's been amazing, and it's more of an understanding and a develop of networking to gain access and provide those services, especially as we kind of transition out of COVID, but with the considerations that this, in fact, is going to still be a longstanding consideration. So I think we got a terrific community. I think it's about building network understanding and getting people pointed in the right directions to provide support.
Great, thank you so much. Mr. Helms.
When I set out on this time to run for city council, when I was looking at my different issues that I wanted to key in on, public safety, simply because I have a background in that, not only as my father being a police officer, but the time as a commanding officer at UCMJ. So public safety for our city. Again, I looked at the strategic plan on all 4 of those issues that's in the strategic plan, and having connections with the special needs when I'm as a substitute teacher, when I teach, I see what's necessary to build an individual development plan inside of these classrooms. I see the connection to the 1973 Rehabilitation Act, 504, Section 504. I see the connection to the 1990 American Disabilities Act. I work with those inside the school system. I've worked with them inside my own life, not only because I wanted to build a home that was wheelchair accessible. I have a granddaughter who has spina bifida, and my wife and I have attended several of the classes. She lives in Kansas City, and she's doing wonderfully. But we wanted to participate with the Infant Development Center there in Shawnee, Kansas, and we have been able to do that. So I live the disabilities piece, not only accessibility, but non-discrimination against employment, non-discrimination against all these areas that is so easy to overlook. I think our city's doing a really good job. Of course, there's more to live a better life and become a better city. And again, I want us to think of ourselves as a large city and to be able to work the transportation needs, the affordable and attainable housing needs, the homeless issues. Those are my pillars that I want to work on, that I've derived out of the city's strategic plan. And I appreciate what the mayor is doing for across the board. And thank you very much for today. I've really appreciated it.
Thank you so much. Just in the sake of transparency, all of the candidates were invited to join us. So I just wanted to put that out there for those people who are watching this in the future. Thank you so much for your thoughtful responses. I really appreciate everybody's time today. I really appreciate you guys taking the time to come and speak with us about these issues. They're near and dear to our heart, and they're very, very important to think about as we move forward as an amazing city. So with all of that said, I think we're just going to wrap things up and remind you all that we will be posting these on our various media platforms, and have a beautiful and wonderful rest of the day. Thank you so much.
Thank you. I hope we didn't go too fast for the interpreter. Oh, good. Okay. Thank you.